Dr. Angela Gallup is one of the world's leading forensic scientists. She solved hundreds of cases, bringing justice for victims and putting their killers behind bars.
Damilola had been fatally wounded, stabbed in the leg with a broken bottle.
They found the man lying downstairs. He'd been stabbed to death.
She died a horrific, agonising death. Her partner did nothing to help.
These are some of the biggest cases that my team and I have faced during my career.
Angela Gallup is one of the foremost independent forensic scientists in the entire world.
Forensic science is like a complicated puzzle that you have to solve, and the stakes are obviously really high.
She's always reliable, always helpful, and always very, very stubborn and dogged. I would really not like to be a murderer if Angela was on the case.
Now, Dr. Gallup is opening her extraordinary casebook to reveal the forensic secrets behind some of the country's most infamous and shocking crimes.
The last and most important thing that you can do for a victim and their family is to find out who killed them and help bring them to justice.
When a young solicitor collapses and dies on a romantic holiday in Egypt, the cause is recorded as heart failure. But can Angela and her team uncover the truth about this death on the Nile?
This case must rate as one of the most bizarre and shocking of my long career in forensic science. All deaths are absolutely tragic. But here was a young woman who had so much of her life left to live. There are so many twists and turns in this particular case. It was quite clear that Cheryl had suffered a most unusual sudden death. This story is absolutely worthy of Agatha Christie.
Cheryl Lewis was a really successful woman. She'd built her own business, she had a name above the door of the solicitor's practice, and she was proud of the work she did. She followed in the footsteps of her father.
Cheryl had separated from her husband. It was amicable. She certainly perhaps found it difficult to meet people because she was a well-known, capable, good solicitor, and some people are a little intimidated by that.
But in the early 1990s, Cheryl Lewis did meet someone, a divorcee named John Allen.
John Allen was an industrial chemist. He had worked in Zambia in mining, and he claimed to have this rather kind of dramatic past where he'd worked in foreign parts and had all sorts of different strings to his bow.
I think that she probably fell for him because he had the charm and the wherewithal to approach her. And Cheryl had explained to me that he'd previously been a professional golfer. And Cheryl had enjoyed her golf. That was her main hobby.
In 1998, John Allen suggested to Cheryl Lewis that they went on holiday to Egypt. He proposed this luxury hotel on the banks of the Nile, the Winter Palace Hotel. It was where Agatha Christie had written Death on the Nile. Cheryl saw it as a nice break, a chance to enjoy the local culture. Just after 5 o'clock, 2 nights before their holiday was meant to finish, reception got a call from a very distressed-sounding John Allen saying that he believed that Cheryl was dying. She was gasping for breath, foaming at the mouth, and her eyes were open, although she appeared to be struggling for life.
Cheryl had been on this, what to any of us would be an absolutely dream holiday, and suddenly she finds herself in this desperate position and dies.
I was obviously distressed and deeply shocked that somebody of 43 years of age, as she was, had died. The circumstances not clear.
Very soon after Cheryl had died, a post-mortem examination was carried out in Egypt, where she was discovered to have died from heart and circulatory failure and acute coronary thrombosis.
Cheryl Lewis's body was flown home to Birkenhead. John Allen flew home separately.
When someone dies overseas, whether or not they've had a post-mortem examination abroad, the coroner will make an assessment. Do we need to understand fully what has gone on?
Cheryl Lewis's father, Eric, was now very, very involved. He was himself a former solicitor. He pushed hard for a post-mortem because he believed something else had gone on. He did not accept the official cause of death.
When it was revealed that there would be another post-mortem examination in the UK, Martin Green received a visit from Cheryl's boyfriend, John Allen.
He said, well, there's going to be a post-mortem to determine what happened, and I'm just letting you know that Cheryl used to take heroin. And I went, words to the effect of, you've got to be kidding, haven't you? Oh, she wouldn't inject it or smoke it. No, what she did, she'd just take a spoonful to help her sleep. There was no way in my mind that Cheryl Lewis would ever have used heroin or any drug of any description.
The pathologist in the UK, when he did a post-mortem, he discovered nothing really that you could put your finger on that would explain why she died quite so quickly.
But what he did notice was hemorrhaging in the lining of the stomach and 2 small perforations in the upper part of the stomach. And this caused him great concern, and he arranged for further toxicological tests to be performed.
But the Forensic Science Service was already swamped with work from another case.
A doctor from Manchester is at the centre of an investigation into the deaths of more than 20 of his patients.
Forensic Science Service at that time was completely inundated with work relating to in the end, hundreds of cases involving the GP, Harold Shipman, who had been poisoning his patients with morphine, hastening their deaths.
3 months had now passed since Cheryl's death. Time was running out to do further tests on her body. So the detectives turned to Dr. Angela Gallup.
We were called up to see Merseyside police, and the police didn't seem to be getting anywhere. And so the case was on the verge of becoming a cold case for them, and I think they were getting a bit nervous about it. They hadn't found anything that would explain Cheryl's death. And so they decided to ask whether we would be able to help them solve it. When we get asked to help the police with a case, we never really know which direction it's going to go in. But having said that, in this case, it looked as if Cheryl had taken something or been exposed to something which had caused her death. And so it was always going to start with toxicology, which is a study of body fluids and tissues for harmful substances. They can be poisons or therapeutic medicines just taken in far too large a quantity, or drug abuse. So really anything that's gone wrong chemically in your body and has resulted in awful symptoms or even death.
Toxicologists are usually involved in suspicious deaths and in cases of poisonings to determine what the poison may be.
Neither the pathologist nor the Forensic Science Service had been able to determine the cause of Cheryl's death, but they did provide Angela's team with an intriguing clue.
The toxicology report from the original scientists suggested that there was a small amount of cyanide there, and also some thiocyanate, which is a breakdown product of cyanide. But Cheryl was a smoker.
And anyone who smokes is exposed to much higher levels of cyanide every time they smoke. And one can get quite high levels of cyanide in the body due to heavy smoking.
And so it was then all a question of levels. Was it significant or wasn't it? That needed investigating.
But a far greater problem was posed by the way Cheryl's body had been brought back from Egypt.
It was about 2 weeks before the body was returned to England. The body had been embalmed, and as usual, formaldehyde had been injected into it to preserve it prior to transportation back to the UK.
Formaldehyde destroys the cyanide. So we were in a difficult situation with interpreting the cyanide levels in her body.
In the early stages, the police very definitely suspected John Allen. Doesn't mean to say they're right, and we're very used to not taking too much notice of police hunches and suspicions and that sort of thing. But the question the police wanted answering was, had John Allen killed Cheryl, or was it something else completely? And if she had been murdered, could we prove it?
World-renowned forensic scientist Dr. Angela Gallop has been asked to investigate the suspicious death of a 43-year-old solicitor who died suddenly in Egypt.
Cheryl Lewis was on holiday with her boyfriend, John Allen, when one evening she suddenly became extremely ill and died very shortly afterwards.
Cheryl died on October the 9th, 1998, of what officials in Luxor believed was natural causes. But her local force, Merseyside Police, was suspicious.
The police admitted that they had no evidence, or no evidence you could really rely on, but they just had an awful lot of suspicion. It was quite clear that Cheryl had suffered a most unusual sudden death.
The Winter Palace is a luxury hotel on the banks of the Nile. Cheryl and John Allen were staying in room 508.
In most of the cold case work, the old historic case work that I do, I have been at one stage or another to the crime scene because it's so important to establish this context. But this is one place where I've never been. And it's amazing, when you're here, you begin to get the feel and the rhythm of the place, and you begin to understand more about what people have been describing as part of the context of the case that you're looking at. It's really important to hear about what eyewitnesses, people who've been there at the time and witnessed some of the events, have to say about what they saw and they heard and they experienced, because that gives us a focus for the test that we're later going to apply.
Angela is meeting Heidi Rees, who was working for a holiday company in Luxor in 1998.
I was based at the Winter Palace, and I lived in the hotel as well. When I first saw Cheryl, she was just sparkly. She had the most twinkly eyes. And we instantly connected because she was from North Wales and me being from South West Wales. We had this big connection and they just seemed excited for their lovely holiday in Luxor.
What are your memories of that night when Cheryl became ill?
There was a phone call to the Thompson mobile phone and I answered the phone and it was John Allen on the phone and he was, you better get to the room now, there's something wrong with Cheryl. So I was like, straight away, I'll be there now. So I just got ready and went, and as I was approaching the room, the hotel had its own doctor. So I grabbed the doctor, so he came with me to the hotel. When we went in the room, the first thing I noticed, there was such a bitter smell in the room. I didn't know what that smell was. It was very bitter, sour.
Like with almonds? Did you get anything from...
Kind of nutty, yeah. Cheryl was lying on the bed and she looked really cold. And I was rubbing her hands and I think she just passed there and then, really. But John Allen just stood there. We'd all asked him to give mouth to mouth and he wasn't doing anything, and it was a surreal kind of moment in that room, because if you think about how you would be in that situation, I'd be frantic.
Yes. So did you notice anything else in the room that might conceivably be relevant, or in retrospect look relevant?
I noticed a little glass on the bedside table. It had a slice of lemon in there. I'm just presuming it could have been a gin and tonic or something. There was a little bit left in the glass. So when the ambulance came, they got her in the ambulance and took her to the hospital. So this is the hospital here, El Karnak Hospital.
Yes.
This is the hospital that Cheryl was brought to by ambulance. When I arrived, I went in and up the stairs to the mezzanine level. John Allen was sitting quietly and there was a ceiling fan on the ceiling. And he looked up at the fan and then looked at me and said, "What are you doing in my dream, Heidi?"
I mean, that's an extraordinary thing to
very strange,
say to you.
Very strange.
What did you do?
At the time, I just thought he was in massive shock. Whatever. So I just, sat with him for a while, and somebody came in and confirmed that Cheryl had died. And I can't really remember John Allen's reaction to being told that, but I did give him a hug.
Yeah.
So I just said, I'm here to support you.
Yes, yeah. Well, it was amazing to hear the sort of detail that Heidi's able to give of when she first went into the hotel room and everything that happened that evening. One of the things struck me was that she mentioned that there was a sweet, bitter smell when she walked into the room. And that to me was fascinating, because the bittersweet, almondy smell is characteristic of cyanide. And of course that would fit with some of the medical symptoms that it was obvious Cheryl was suffering from.
John Allen refused a lift back to the hotel with local police and instead asked Heidi to walk along the riverside with him.
Did you feel a bit sort of vulnerable when you were with this man who'd been behaving rather strangely, and for whatever reason, whatever understandable reason?
I can't remember a conversation that we had during the walk.
No.
It was very awkward, but then I'm thinking maybe I didn't know what to say to somebody who just lost their partner.
Yeah.
But when we arrived at the hotel, things got a little bit stranger there then.
So you made it back here, back to the Winter Palace
back to
Hotel.
the hotel. The following morning, I met him in the reception. He was saying really strange things to me, that a hit had been made on Cheryl because she'd let police in Liverpool use her offices to keep an eye on some drug baron. And then we were talking about things, and he was saying to me all about he'd been an arms dealer in the Middle East, he was a mercenary, and that he was releasing a book in 2 weeks, and a hit was made on Cheryl because of the book.
The sort of things that are kind of telling you something might be a bit wrong are building up, aren't they, with the whole thing the night before. That sounds really strange.
John Allen's wild claims had raised eyebrows in Luxor. And back home in Birkenhead, his behaviour continued to cause Cheryl's friends and family to become suspicious.
When John Allen returned to the UK, he was living in Cheryl Lewis's house, and he was in contact at certain times with her family, mainly to try and establish whether or not they'd found her will.
I think her estate was probably worth £500,000 plus at that point in time. And the indication was the earlier drafts were, as you'd expect, leaving it to her immediate family, brother, sister, father.
But when colleagues passed it to the family, they realised that it had been rewritten. In the past, everything was being left to them. This time, everything was being left to John Allen.
It was a real shock, yes. I didn't expect that to be in her will because she had such a close bond with all of her immediate family.
And John Allen also had his eyes set on something else of Cheryl's, her distinctive blue Mercedes. He'd even changed Cheryl's private number plate.
It was a business partnership vehicle. It was subject to a bank loan at the time, and I said to him, look, you know, that car, we need to deal with it. And he indicated that he would be interested in buying it off us. And then a few days went by, and I heard nothing, and I rang him and said, what's happening over this car? And the reaction I got from him was astonishing. He said, oh, well, I thought you'd snatched it back. And I said, what do you mean by that? Well, I parked it in the drive at her house where I'm living, and when I woke up the other morning it was gone. So at this stage I am a little bit concerned because I've heard stories about heroin usage which I didn't believe. I'd had a car that John Allen had been using which apparently had been stolen. It's totally bizarre, yeah.
The mystery of the missing Mercedes took another twist when the car was discovered parked a few streets away from Cheryl's house. A crude attempt had been made to disguise it.
The tax disc wasn't an English tax disc, it was a yellow piece of paper in the tax disc holder. It appeared to be rubber stamped as though it was from an African country, Zambia. It looked like it had been made with a sort of printing kit of some description.
Having seized the Mercedes, the police now rang Angela with a fresh clue.
When the police find Cheryl's car, they discover in a compartment between the two front seats a black bag which contains 4 briquettes of some sort of white substance. These briquettes were obviously intensely interesting to us at the time. They were unknown chemicals, which we thought looked very strange, very suspicious. But were they the source of the poison that killed Cheryl?
World-leading forensic scientist Dr. Angela Gallop has been called in to investigate the sudden death of Birkenhead solicitor Cheryl Lewis, who died on holiday in Egypt. Police have suspicions about her boyfriend, John Allen, but no evidence, other than hints of a tiny trace of cyanide in Cheryl's body.
One of the reasons that the police were so suspicious about John Allen was that he had come back to the UK before Cheryl's body came back, and that he was living in her house and he was driving her car around.
Under pressure to hand back Cheryl's Mercedes to the company that owned it, John Allen claimed it had been stolen. In fact, he kept using the car until it was found parked a few streets from Cheryl's house.
The police found a black plastic bag in the car, and there was 4 what I should call briquettes in the plastic bag.
The briquettes were crystalline, they were glistening, looked like sort of ice, compacted ice or something. And Alex took a tiny sample, a crystal off one of these briquettes for the chemical analysis he needed to do.
And the results came back confirming that indeed it was cyanide in the briquettes, and in actual fact it was sodium cyanide.
Sodium cyanide provided a fascinating link with John Allen's past.
John Allen was an industrial chemist. He had worked in Zambia and claimed that he had an illustrious career in foreign parts, and in many ways that was how he managed to woo Cheryl Lewis.
Cheryl knew that John Allen had been married twice before and had been briefly suspected of shooting his second wife. She'd been shot in the arm in Zambia, where he'd been working in the mining industry. Both Allen and his wife had denied he'd been involved in the attack, and no action was taken against him.
John Allen said that the shooting of his wife was the result of him being tracked by those from his past, potentially those that had been involved in the illegal arms trade.
He had left Zambia, but his experience in the mining industry meant he was familiar with the briquettes found years later in Cheryl's Mercedes.
Briquettes are used commonly in the mining industry to help extract gold from ores. So they are readily available to somebody who was an industrial chemist in the mining industry.
And in his spare time, he also found another use for cyanide.
John Allen had an unusual hobby. He was very much into collecting butterflies, and he used cyanide to kill the butterflies and preserve them in their natural state. In other words, not with their wings damaged as if they'd been under duress or something during the death, but in a perfect form. So he'd get a glass jar and he'd put some cyanide in the base, and this would release cyanide gas, and the butterflies would die very quickly. And then he used to pin them on boards.
His first wife described it as his gas chamber that he liked to watch the butterflies die in.
And so he was not only used to using sodium cyanide in his everyday work, but also in his hobbies.
John Allen's expertise with chemicals such as cyanide was intriguing, but it was not proof that he had murdered Cheryl. The clues had to be found in Cheryl's body.
Normally we would look in the blood and in the urine. That's where we look for all chemicals and poisons and drugs. But in a case that's come from abroad, has been embalmed, we have to look in other areas, and we look then in what we call the solid organs, the liver, the spleen. So we'd look in those slightly more unusual places in a situation where the body has been dead for some time.
So in this case, we were interested in not just the samples that had already been analysed, but broader samples, things like the stomach contents, and particularly when we had the medical evidence. On her stomach lining, there were 2 small patches of thinning, as if some corrosive substance had been up against the wall of the stomach there.
We analysed the liquid from the stomach contents for cyanide, and we also analysed it for its breakdown product, its metabolite, thiocyanate, which lasts much longer in the body. We found elevated concentrations of thiocyanate in Cheryl's stomach contents, somewhat higher, I believe, than would be expected from someone who was a heavy smoker. Again, this seemed to point to a possible involvement of cyanide in the death of Cheryl.
So Alex and his colleagues were definitely suspicious about cyanide. The Forensic Science Service had found traces. He'd found traces from the stomach, but not enough to be confident that it was actually the cause of death. So he needed to do something different, needed to consider a wider range of samples from Cheryl's body. And one of the scientists we used to enable us to take the case further was Bob Mays, who we recruited from the RAF toxicology unit.
I served in the toxicology department of the RAF Institute of Pathology and Tropical Medicine, and I spent many years analysing body fluids and tissue from fatal aircraft accident victims.
Victims of air crashes are often overcome by cyanide in the fumes caused by fire. So could cyanide expert Bob Mays find more traces of the killer chemical in Cheryl?
We tested the blood for cyanide, and we found a very low level of cyanide, which was probably certainly not indicative of any poisoning.
So Bob and Alex had one last opportunity. If cyanide was to remain anywhere, it would be in Cheryl's spleen.
Indeed, the level of cyanide found in the spleen suggested that there was a higher level of cyanide in the body at some earlier stage.
These elevated levels of cyanide in the spleen seem to be more than would be expected from those present in a heavy smoker, bearing in mind the presence of embalming fluid and the length of time since Cheryl had died.
This really meant that the cause of Cheryl's death was at last being identified and confirmed. And so that was a big moment, a big breakthrough moment for Alex and Bob.
But how had John Allen been able to give Cheryl cyanide, despite its strong taste and smell?
In Egypt, John Allen gave her a gin and tonic and handed her the anti-malarial tablets that she took every day. And it was very shortly after that she died.
I was suspicious that one of the briquettes the police found in the car actually had 9.5 grams missing, and it looked as though pieces of the carved off wedge had been used to poison Cheryl. John Allen had actually carved a couple of pieces of sodium cyanide in the shape of tablets.
John Allen knew all the time that he was absolutely safe poisoning her in this way because she'd lost her sense of smell after a car crash a number of years before.
So there was no risk of her smelling cyanide. If she was given a gin and tonic to wash it down, then she wouldn't have been suspicious.
John Allen's offending behaviour is really characterised by patience. He takes his time, he plans. He made sure that they were going to Egypt, he made sure that he had the cyanide tablets with him. And what makes this so disturbing is that it's perpetrated by someone who is close to the victim, the person that they wouldn't suspect to hurt them, which makes it all the more terrifying.
This was not a crime of passion. This was murder without mercy.
Angela's forensic team had unlocked the secret of the death on the Nile. A carefully planned poisoning of an innocent woman by a man who swore he loved her. But there was a shocking new twist. Back home in Merseyside, and believing he'd got away with murder, John Allen already had another victim in his sights.
A few days after John Allen returned to the UK, he started to date a friend of Cheryl's who he'd met at the golf club, I think. And what was really interesting was that she started to have stomach problems. In fact, she was taken into hospital with these. It was that serious.
This obviously concerned us that John Allen was trying to poison her as well.
So it felt increasingly as though John Allen was an extremely dangerous man. His MO remained exactly the same, and he was doing exactly the same sort of thing with her. And killers like this don't stop.
Dr. Angela Gallup and her forensic team have found evidence to show that industrial chemist John Allen poisoned his partner Cheryl Lewis during a holiday in Egypt with cyanide disguised as anti-malarial tablets. Now John Allen's new girlfriend has fallen ill.
I'd had a phone call from the senior officer in charge of the investigation saying that they had concerns about another lady who had been admitted to hospital with stomach pains.
The police decided to arrest John Allen, and I think that was probably just in time.
John Allen was now in the hands of Merseyside police, and he was again claiming that Cheryl had died of a heroin overdose. But among the body samples that Angela's team had received from Cheryl were strands of her hair.
Hair provides us with a history of previous drug consumption. Hair on the crown of the head grows out at about 1 centimetre a month, so 1 centimetre of hair represents 1 month of history of drug use, if you like. So we section some of our hair and we analyse the whole hair and segments of the hair for the presence of heroin and its breakdown products, and we didn't find a trace of morphine or heroin in the hair.
So there was absolutely no evidence to show that she had been addicted to heroin.
I was a 23-year-old reporter when the case of John Allen came to court at Liverpool. It was incredible to hear John Allen's defence in court.
John Allen today claimed that her death could have been the result of an overdose of anti-malaria tablets.
He claimed she'd had affairs with suspected drug dealers. It was just a whole string of completely crazy scenarios, and they seemed to get worse by the moment.
Mrs. Lewis could have been killed because he had a history in the Special Forces. Mrs. Lewis may have died as part of a campaign against Welsh women in Luxor because another Welsh woman had become ill at the same time.
John Allen was a compulsive liar. It didn't seem to matter whether the lie could be proven or disproven. He just said it, and he told lie after lie after lie, and it's all in the effort to really achieve his goal, which is financial gain.
With John Allen's web of lies closing in on him, one more error in his plan would seal his fate.
John Allen travelled back to England to claim his trophy, her £460,000 estate, built of a home on the Wirral and a firm of solicitors.
John Allen actually amended Cheryl Lewis's will. He changed elements of the first 3 pages, but kept the final page where the signatures of both Cheryl and the witnesses remained.
He changed that will, and he changed the will and misspelt her middle name. She spelt it Leslie with an EY. He'd written it IE.
In fact, in his haste, John Allen had even misspelt his own middle name.
It's hard to understand how this could happen. But there's something about his arrogance and his belief in his ability to get away with it that meant that John Allen had this unwavering belief that he was above it all and he wouldn't get caught.
In a bizarre twist, it also emerged that John Allen had tricked Cheryl out of money before.
There was a New Year's Eve function and an item of jewellery went missing. It had been her late mother's ring and she was desperate to get it back.
She put a notice in the local paper asking for its safe return and sure enough got a reply almost instantly.
She explained that she'd received an anonymous letter from somebody in the post saying that if she wanted the ring back, she had to hand over a sum of money. It was £2,200.
She paid money as requested for this ring to be returned and got it back.
It seemed to me that here was effectively somebody that was blackmailing her to get back a piece of important personal jewellery.
That had seemed to be the end of the story. But after John Allen's arrest, the anonymous demand for money was brought to detectives' attention.
The police sent us the ransom note, and we managed to extract some saliva from the back of the stamp on the note and do some DNA profiling on it. And sure enough, it turned out to match John Allen's DNA, thus proving that it was he who had stolen the ring and he who had sent the ransom note and so on and sent it back to Cheryl.
Cheryl Lewis was wealthy, talented and respected. She died a horrific, agonising death. Her partner did nothing to help.
John Allen didn't attempt to comfort Cheryl Lewis in any way, and he certainly never attempted to save her life.
We'd said to him, can you give her mouth to mouth? But he wasn't doing that. He wasn't moving really.
No, so he was kind of separated from
totally.
Everything that was going on in front of him.
The fact that he didn't give her mouth-to-mouth resuscitation seemed to me that he was worried about contamination.
John Allen knew perfectly well why he couldn't try and resuscitate Cheryl Lewis, because the cyanide that he put into her system would have poisoned him as well.
Sentencing Allen, Mrs. Justice Smith said, "You've been convicted by this jury on what is, in my opinion, convincing evidence." She went on to say, "This was a premeditated and cruel killing. You abused the trust Cheryl Lewis placed in you as her partner." John Allen showed no response as Mrs. Justice Smith told him he'd served life imprisonment and that she'd recommend to the Home Secretary he served a very long time.
Fortunately, justice has been done, and that is all we wanted for our dear Cheryl. And she'll be very sorely missed by us all. Life will never be the same again without her.
Cheryl's mistake was to unfortunately fall for a man who wanted money at any cost. A fraudster, a murderer, a man that was described by the police to me as being a sociopath because he has no compassion. I think about Cheryl a lot. I miss her. Just a terrible shame. And I think about her a lot.
Here I am in this magnificent temple in Karnak, very close to Luxor. And this was where Cheryl visited, either on the day of her death or the day before her death. And I have in my hand a photograph of her standing with this same backdrop. And this is the last photograph that was taken of Cheryl while she was alive. She must have been photographed by her boyfriend, by John Allen, and so this says something about their relationship to me, because her eyes look completely dead, not the sort of sparkling version that we've seen in other photographs of her. And similarly, her mouth is set in a line, it's not smiling, so nothing about her face is expressing much emotion or much positive emotion. And that just makes me think that she was pretty unhappy on this day. And I know it's easy to say in retrospect, but that is what this picture is actually saying. And it's very difficult not to be struck by it. At the heart of this, we must always remember the victim. She was just apparently a lovely woman who just fell in love with the wrong man and paid for it with her life.